Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome to Relic Arena. You might have wondered where I've been the past few weeks, and well, the thing that I've been mostly playing is this new auto battler Relic Arena. For those of you that have played Dota 2 or Ability Arena, you might be somewhat familiar with this particular game, as it is a passion project by two Dota personalities, Jenkins and Sunsfan, and well, safe to say that it's really captured me. I don't know anything about Dota or Ability Arena, but I have been somewhat addicted to learning how this game works, figuring out, what is good and what perhaps isn't so good. The point of this video is mainly going to be to show you guys what the game is about, how does it work, what have I learned so far, and give you guys perhaps some Relic builds to help you get started if you want to try this out for yourself. Timestamps will be down below if you're interested in certain parts of the video. And yeah, without that, let's just get into the training arena and show you guys what Relic Arena is all about. All right, so what I'm going to be doing is compare this to other auto battlers that you might know, which is going to be Hearthstone Battlegrounds and Teamfight Tactics. Much like Battlegrounds, at the start of every game of Relic Arena, you will get a choice of leaders, and these leaders will all have an ability, can be passive or active, to kind of shape the way that you want to play during a game and help you out in certain aspects. I will not go through all of them in detail. I think that is better left to discover for yourself, but I will, at the very end of this video, give you guys some ideas on what I think are pretty easy leaders to begin with, and help you get started. For now, let's just grab Abraham Lincoln and hop into the sandbox. Much like Hearthstone Battlegrounds and TFT, in this game you'll be facing 7 other players every game. So you'll be in lobbies of 8. Every single round you will rotate between all of the other players. If you win, you will deal damage to them. If you lose, you will take damage. You will start with 200 hit points at the beginning of the game, and if that gets reduced to 0, you are eliminated. Get top 4, you gain MMR. Get bottom 4, you will lose MMR. Pretty simple. Every single round, you will have some time to kind of develop your board, strategize, and then you will have an automatic battle phase afterwards against one of your opponents. So let's perhaps start with the shop in this case and how that works. As you see, the shop here offers relics, it offers items. So that is the kind of different thing about this very game, where instead of buying the heroes like you would in Battlegrounds and TFT, you buy the relics, the items that go on your heroes, and you try to find synergies between those. This shop is a shared pool between all of your opponents, so if something is very contested, it might be hard to find the item that you need, and perhaps this will incentivize you to try out something else or reward you for going for an item that isn't as contested. You will see on the bottom left that you will have a leader and a shop upgrade button, which are relatively self-explanatory. The leader will get upgraded and make their ability more powerful. The shop upgrade will make the shop more powerful. Generally speaking, on level 2, 4, and 5, this will just give you more slots and offer you more relics so you can find what you need. But keep in mind that level 3 shop will not give you more slots. Instead, it will open up an additional pool of ultimate relics, which are supposed to be a little bit stronger, but do keep in mind that they dilute the pool. So if you are trying to make builds with only standard relics, or you're really looking for a particular standard relic, sometimes it might be good to delay that shop upgrade to level 3 and stay on level 2 to find, the standard relics that you need, instead of really pushing for those ultimate relics. Now, the way that you make your leader and shop upgrades more affordable is every single round that passes, both of them will become 1 cheaper. You can, however, make them 2 gold cheaper by keeping some gold at the end of the round in your bank. So the way that it works is that if you keep 1 gold, either one of them will randomly become 2 cheaper, while the other will become 1 cheaper. If you decide to keep 2 gold in the bank, then you guarantee that both of them become 2 cheaper instead of 1. Pretty important mechanic, something to keep in mind if you want to push for these levels. Naturally, there are some leaders here that will like to, be prioritized and have a higher leader level pretty early. And there are some leaders that function just fine on level 2 or 3 and allow you to kind of go hunt for those ultimate relics if that is something that you want to build around. As for the relics, each one of them has a page like this. Now they have a kind of base trait. So here, the Devil's Bible, for instance, relics now cost health instead of mana, passively grants relic lifesteal. But you can see the super upgrades. If you manage to find multiple copies of Devil's Bible, it will upgrade its level, making it more powerful, but also allowing you to choose these super upgrades, of which there are 3. At level 3 and 6, you get to pick 1, so at most you will have 2 out of 3, and this kind of allows you to really amp up your builds. If somehow you manage to get a relic to level 9, its maximum level, you will get the Juicy trait over here that usually is very, very powerful, but somewhat difficult to get as there are only 18 relics in the pool at all times, with some exceptions, as there are some heroes or leaders that can allow you to kind of create bonus relics out of kind of thin air that don't affect the pool, but that is something else entirely. So you kind of want to try and find more copies of the relics that you want to build because they will become more powerful in doing so. Where do you put those relics? Well, you put them on your heroes. And at the beginning of the game, you will start with 1 right here. You can have a look at the swap hero button, which you will find here on the top right. And that will show you all the heroes that are available to you. So you have an assassin, a tank, a witch, a ranger, and each of them kind of have their own traits, which often correspond with a certain subset of relics that you can filter for. So if you go and have a look here at the relic deck, you can have a look here at, recommended relics for assassins, for rangers, for witches, for tanks, and that makes it a little bit easier perhaps to know what you want to build. You will also see that each of the relics, when highlighted, will kind of show you what they pair well with to allow you to have kind of a starting point for your builds. Now, do you get more heroes? Yes, you do. So at the start of the game, everything is relatively simple. You don't have a lot of gold. Your shop doesn't offer you a lot of relics, and you will only have 1 hero. On round 3, you will get a second hero. On round 6, a third. And on round 9, your final and 4th one. And keep in mind that you can at all times swap between them. So even after selecting, let's say, a witch, you can always swap that back to a tank, an assassin, a ranger, depending on the relics that you find or the build that you eventually want to go for. And this opens up a lot of, possibilities because you're not capped to 1 assassin or 1 tank. You can have 4 assassins. You can have a tank and 3 witches if you want to. And so there's a lot of different builds here that you get to try out, even though you will only have 4 heroes on the board at all times. That kind of explains this whole part of Relic Arena. And what I want to get into now is some sample builds for each of the heroes to perhaps help you get started, help you get an idea of, what you could try and aim for. So if we have a look at the tanks and some different builds that are available to them, you generally speaking will have kind of 2 archetypes, perhaps, that you could think of for tanks. One being a very classic type of tank build where you really just go for, a lot of passive stats, lots of regeneration, magic armor, regular armor, and just general, hit points, which would be kind of the 1st and the 4th build that you see here, where you might have something like Aztec Sunstone, where you deal damage surrounding. You also kind of block a bunch of the damage that you take at the start of the fight. You have Trojan Shield, where you reflect a bunch of damage. Barbed Wire, similar concept. And then something like a Tesla Coil, which actually allows you to do bonus damage based on, whenever you deal instances of damage. So having a lot of these reflection type of, damage really pairs well with something like this and makes it trigger rather often. You then have, something where you might want to jump into the backline with the tank using a Celtic Axe, and then, with Viking Vanguard, taunt the enemies in the backline to the tank and kind of make sure that, they don't go for your carries, buying you more time. And then you just generally compare those with stuff like bonus maximum health and perhaps, more magic armor and health regen, the lower hit points you get. So you've got your classic tank builds here. Then you can also have more caster, based tanks that actually want to use mana. Now, the tank is very bad at gaining mana typically, but there are 2 items that can allow you to do this. One of them being the Devil's Bible, where you start using health instead of mana. The other one being the Viking Runestone, where you get mana based on, having dealt a certain amount of damage. Now, the builds that you could go for here is a Plague Doctor build, where you go for the Plague Doctor Mask, paired with the Plague Doctor Cane to deal a bunch of damage, and then something like a Zulu Necklace to deal a lot of damage in the area surrounding your tank. And well, because you have that lifesteal, this actually makes you very, very hard to kill and allows you to deal a bunch of damage as well, even, having this tank role. The other one would be something like this, which is very ultimate heavy. Tesla Radio is great for this type of build, and you can kind of swap here the Aztec Sunstone or the Devil's Bible, depending on what's available. But yeah, this Tesla Radio is great. It deals damage, based on the enemy's max health, which is really nice if you get to have something like lifesteal. And then you can decide to pair that with other ultimate relics like the Guillotine and dog tags, but you could also build something like this if you want to, with Plague Doctor Mask and the Cane, if that is easily available to you. If we then take a look at assassins, you've typically got a lot of builds that want to get into the backline, as kind of, an assassin does. Now, there's a few items that allow you to do that. The 2 that I will be highlighting here is going to be the Grass Cutting Sword, which targets the furthest away enemy, and the F1 Rocket Engine, which is an ultimate that also targets the furthest enemy away. And this actually is a board-wide thing, so it is a bit more powerful than the Grass Cutting Sword in terms of the amount of range it has, and you can put it, all the way here in the back. It will still be able to hit pretty much anywhere. What type of builds can you do? You can either do a more attack-focused build, so something like this, where you have Blade of Ramses, that allows you to kind of get attack speed, Hand of Ramses, where, you deal bonus damage for every X amount of attacks, and something like, some lifesteal, and some bonus damage like Scepter of Agamemnon. Pretty normal build. You just attack a bunch and, you get in the backline first. Something else you could do is go for more AoE based attacks, and this is currently, at the time of speaking, very powerful, which plays around Napoleon's Boots, which allows you to kind of stomp around, and this deals bonus damage based on your attack damage. That's why you pair it with something like Monkey's Paw, which gives you that bonus attack damage. Important here is that you do want to be unstoppable, meaning that you can't be stopped, essentially. Immunity to most relic status effects. And the Mason Chain here is an additional way to kind of grant more AoE and really just start running around and kind of get in the backline by default because you're so speedy. Important with this particular build is that you will want to have the conga drums on one of your other units, allowing you to buff the unit that has the boots. The reason for this is that you can gain attack damage equal to your move speed during the buff, and that really amps up that whole build. Something else, again, right, backline based build, but this time we are playing circles. We are playing a lot of AoE circular effects with the F1 rocket engine, allowing us to get in the backline, and then once we get in the backline, we have Persian Cat, Mammoth Fossil, Orca Fossil to really kind of start crushing, right, anything around your assassin. And then you have a final type of build which you could try, which is more of a frontline type of assassin, where you will usually want something like Sutton Hoo Helmet or the Mason Chain, both grant Unstoppable, and then you have the Tommy Gun to start kind of spraying wildly in a large cone, paired with something like Endeavor Cannon, which procs off of attacks, including Tommy Guns, and something like a Divine Diadem, which allows you to crit with relics and attacks and also gives you that bonus lifesteal. That's kind of the archetypes of assassin that you can go for. That brings us to the witch category, the casters, and here too you have some different archetypes. You can either go for a kind of fast casting, usually kind of damage oriented witch build with some healing in there. That's kind of this first build, right? You have some very low cooldown relics, lunar laser, Pythagorean sphere, yin yang, and philosopher's stone to regain some mana. And yeah, you just constantly cast, you deal damage, you heal your allies, and I mean, this is just a very nice build if you can get your hands on it. There is a different version of this where you don't necessarily need Philosopher's Stone, and instead you can go for something like Crisp Blade, which allows you to get mana back through attacks. Something like Zulu Headdress, which gives you attack speed and lifesteal whenever you cast relics. Then obviously you want some fast casting relics as well. And the bonus thing is that both of these do skill off of max mana, and it turns out that Crisp Blade can amplify your maximum mana on each kill. So pretty nice thing as well if you can get your hands on it early. You can also go for really expensive kind of ultimate relics with very long cooldown timers where everything kind of gets cast at the start. Something like Oil Lamp with Statue of Prometheus, Statue of Liberty, Statue of David. All of these really kind of big, casting relics that go off right at the start of combat, and then you probably won't see them being cast again. And then finally you can go for a more buffing type of caster where you're not really dealing the damage with the caster, but you're trying to amplify another ally. Conga drums, which I mentioned during the assassins, can be part of a build like this. Then you can go for something like Shroud of Turin, Tibetan Prayer Wheel, especially Hope Diamond here is a relic that I like a lot. Very powerful. This triggers when an ally gets to 50% hit points, and it kind of just, saves them from dying. Especially this yellow diamond here, I think is very, very good. That is the witches. Let's maybe move on now to the final category. In the final category of the Rangers, you will have some builds that either focus on typically attack speed and relics that love attack speed, and more heavy damage oriented builds where you don't attack often, but when you do, it deals massive amounts of damage to the enemies. So first, you've got something like this where you're trying to spawn multiple illusions. These illusions will inherit the passives of the units that you're building, and then you're going to have something like Lance of Longinus and Endeavor Cannon, which really do love being procced by attack speed. Now, these are not really attack speed relics per se, but they kind of work like one, because they just spawn more of the caster. You then have a very high damage build below it, which has the pirate flag with the top hat for, massive damage amplification and some really powerful bounces. Paired with the monkey's paw, you are losing a lot of attack speed here, but that isn't really what you're building around. And then I'm going to add the Kevlar vest in there, which can kind of bounce around on Rangers in any build. Really extremely powerful relic, kind of saves you from those backline assassinations, and pairs very nicely here as well, as it does also allow you to buff the attack damage while in the bunker, which happens to be pretty good for most Ranger builds. You can also go for a more mana oriented build where you might do something like this. Again, you're going to pick the Terracotta Army, but this time paired with something like the ultimate relic, the Catapult, giving you a lot of range, kind of sitting you in the backline very safely, and then pair with something like Crisp Blade and Devil's Bible, allowing you to kind of go for that that relic power per max mana thing, and that can be very powerful too. Finally, a more attack speed oriented build with actual attack speed items like Mask of Agamemnon. This does silence the caster, so you do not want to pair this with active relics. Instead, you're going to be pairing it with a bunch of passive relic effects like Scepter of Agamemnon, Jaguar Claw, and Divine Diadem to allow you to have, more damage, more lifesteal, all of that good stuff, and that will kind of help you survive as well if you happen to get targeted by an enemy assassin. So that kind of covers the basic builds that I want to go over. by no means is this the be all and end all of what is possible in this game. There are a lot more builds out there, and I'm sure that there are better variations of the builds that I've shown you, but I do think that this kind of gets across a certain concept, and if you're starting out, it can be especially helpful to kind of be able to see, oh, okay, like this is what I could build around, and, you know, see if it works for me or not. Finally, I think we should briefly go over some of the leaders in this game and what my recommendations would be for them. So, if we have the leader screen in front of us, the leaders that I would recommend playing when you're starting out would be, to begin with, Abraham Lincoln. He's extremely solid as a hero. He basically gives you free relic upgrades every now and then. And I mean, he's relatively simple to play around, right? You just get a nice little buff every now and then, and you can focus on really building your board. I think especially on Lincoln, what you want to do is keep the shop level low. So level 2 is plenty, and kind of stick around there for most of the game, and try to kind of get those juicy upgrades through his passive ability. Don't go upgrading him to level 5 as fast as possible. That is just not worth. The level 5 ability upgrade on Lincoln just isn't worth the investment typically. I would recommend staying on either leader 3 or 4 for Lincoln. The other leader I'm going to be recommending is going to be Cleopatra. Very, very powerful. Has these 2 cobras once you get to level 3 that can carry a relic, and the relic gets copied. So you will have 2 of the same relics on the board, and that's very powerful because that's generally not a thing in this game, right? You can't have 2 of the same relics on 2 different heroes, but you can with these cobras. Very good with the cobras at this moment is the Tesla coil and something like the toilet or the mask of King Tut, which allows you to kind of deal that upfront kind of stun damage. Really helps out a bunch. Other things you could go for, as shown here, are the statue and the oil lamp to spawn 2 genies at the start of the round. Dong Zhuo, also very powerful, straightforward leader, gives you bonus hit points on the selected unit. Generally speaking, you will just want to build a tank, give them this ability, and you'll be good to go for most of the game. I think Gandhi, also very powerful right now, but perhaps a little bit more tricky. What he allows is to keep respawning a unit after it died, as long as the rest of your army is still alive. And this pairs very nicely with something like a tank as well, with, let's say, you know, a taunting relic that can go off again when the unit respawns after dying. And finally, I'm going to be mentioning Isaac Newton, which I think is very powerful with an assassin, especially the one build that I showed you guys with the conga drums, with the boots and the mace and chain. Works very well with this. The way that Newton works is that his ability allows the carrier to kind of have a chance to deal bonus damage and, you know, make all kinds of items to drop from the sky to really have a ton of upfront damage. And so generally speaking, you will want to pair this with a unit that can deal that upfront damage, which will often be within the assassin category. All right, I think that's enough. There are some others here. Vlad, I think, and Xerxes are relatively simple to play as well. But I think that for now, this is probably, you know, a good little recommendation to get you guys started. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Let me down in the comments below if you've been playing this game, if you knew about it, if you're going to be trying it out, and, you know, how you find it. Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.